Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, Governor Eric Holcomb stops by to talk about the state of the Indiana economy, nonstop flights, its 2020 Next Level agenda, and more. We get an update on tourism in Indianapolis. The Indiana State Museum takes on the opioid crisis. Indiana's online university inks a key partnership. We talk to the retiring commissioner of the IHSAA, and our panel of insiders weighs in on the top stories of the week. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Indiana is facing its share of challenges and opportunities in 2020. There have already been big job and investment announcements this year, but is the talent there to fill the new openings? Can the state attract more international flights? What's the next big industry for Indiana? Governor Eric Holcomb joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to talk about it all.
I mentioned the two big announcements. So coming off a record 2019, Toyota, Fiat, Chrysler with big announcements, perhaps bodes well for 2020.
Well, it certainly does, because they're investing in the future, and they're not just jobs, they're great careers. And when you think about last year and all over the world, we were selling and telling the Indiana success story, and it resonated. And we've got an in-migration coming here to the state of Indiana, and that includes businesses and talent. And we did $8.444 billion worth of capital investment last year. And some said that was a tough year. That was our record high year. And what's most important is those wages, those hourly wages, were at an all-time high, $28.60 average wages. So we've come a long way from when the Indiana Economic Development Corporation stood up. Those jobs, hourly wages were about 18. So they've gone up, $10 an hour.
You mentioned the international investment. I think at the Toyota announcement, you talked about that plant helping the state to sell Indiana to the world. The message obviously is getting through as you look at the last few years. Infosys, Axis Cadis, a number of international Saab. What's driving that? What do you think is making that message click?
We've got all the important levers or arrows heading in the right direction. When you consider we're investing in our people, our greatest asset, that's that workforce, that talent pipeline that they have to have in order to grow. We've got our infrastructure investments across the board, every which way that we connect with one another and markets and their customers. They've got to grow. So they need to be able to get their products that we grow and that we make and that we innovate to their market base. And then when you think about making sure that our economy is dialed in, that it's modernized, this is just, we have the recipe for success, and companies want to be able to grow at their own pace to meet the demand. So I think it's being recognized that we check all three of those boxes, the workforce, the infrastructure, logistically, how they get their products, and then also our economy is very attractive, as you pointed out.
Safe to say that international investment will continue to be a key part of the strategy?
We're over 1,000 foreign-owned businesses in the state of Indiana, employing over 203,000 Hoosiers. And the trend, when I look at our first quarter pipeline, it is stronger and fuller than it's ever been. So we came off a strong fourth quarter, and we're headed in the right direction in the first quarter of this year.
As part of that strategy, you have announced plans for a global economic summit, kind of a Davos type situation here in April, attracting CEOs and key execs from around the world to Indianapolis.
Diplomats and decision makers, and we'll have some very high, ranking folks, not just part of the committee, but speakers. We're going to be talking about the future, what it looks like here in the heart of the heartland, how we solve problems, whether it's energy storage or the future of higher education, all the things that are important to a business, no matter how large or small that business is, for their growth. And we'll do it right here. We're already on the international stage. We think that our voice will carry even further when we invite folks in.
Give us an idea of some of the guests who may be there?
We'll have, I can tease it at least. We'll have the highest ranking American diplomat here. We'll have a former football coach who's quite the motivational speaker here. We'll have former educated at Indiana University, successful CEO types that have gone on to start very large businesses. We'll put the whole list out, but it will be folks. When Secretary Schillinger and I talked, we said we want to have folks come in here that when they speak, markets listen. Yeah. And so that's what's going to be shared. And so it's more than networking. It's how do we get a glimpse into the future?
A big event in the week ahead is the Routes Americas Conference, which I believe this is only the third time it's ever been held in North America. And being held here in Indianapolis, route planners from around the globe are going to be here. You talk about connectivity and the importance of nonstop flights. There's a Paris nonstop, 50-plus nonstops at Indy International. Do you expect more nonstops to be announced this year, especially on an international stage?
I expect and I insist. This is the way of the future. And, we've got the best airport 7 years straight in North America, ranked so. Plus, we have the extra advantage of having these big city regional airports. And so, time is money, whether it's road, rail, barge, certainly air. It's when that product leaves the factory floor or that service, how do we connect with the rest of the world? And those nonstop flights are critically important to being in the middle, being in the heart of the heartland for the success of our entrepreneurs.
And are those efforts focused really to kind of align with where the international investment is in Indiana? Those international
Yeah, the business model has to work, of course, but coming from with our foreign direct investment that has tripled in 3 years, we've got to meet the market demands no matter how far away they are or on either coast. So we're now in a position to where folks are calling us from other states or other countries saying, it's time for us to talk. You're a very attractive partner. How do we meet?
Yeah. You talk about challenges for the state, certainly workforce, talent attraction for all states, and certainly here in Indiana. As you look at the workforce issue, the skills gap, training issue, there's a lot of moving parts there. How does Indiana continue to address that issue?
Yeah, well, we're putting the resources there. Unfortunately, because our economy is growing, we can afford to do just that. And so you have to make sure that the talent pipeline, K through 12, is not leaking. And then you also have to make sure that adult talent pipeline is in place. And what we've done is, as a state, we've said, if you'll put the time in, we'll put the money in, we'll put the skin in, and then we'll credential you up. The good news is we have the people, we have the jobs available, 92,000 high wage, high demand jobs currently available that you can get on your phone on the ICC app, the Indiana Career Connector app, and all you got to do is put that time in to get credentialed up in these high quality credentials and certificates. The good news is people are starting to take advantage of these since the program rolled out a couple years ago. 900 businesses have skilled up 9,000 of their employees, 23,000 folks have said, I'll go to Ivy Tech or Vincennes University and get that certificate, and oftentimes that leads you on that path to double or triple your salary.
30 seconds left, Governor, but as you look ahead at 2020, I know you have a positive outlook here, but what can we expect in the year ahead from the Indiana economy?
We're not going to be slowing down, and we're going to continue to grow, and what that means is more opportunity for more people. Success attracts success, and so how we manage that growth is critically important, and you'll start to see even more investment into quality of place. That's that other ingredient in addition to that economy and workforce and location, it's the quality of place, where people live, that we'll invest in.
Seeing that a lot around the state already. You expect to see more of that as well. Governor Eric Holcomb, as always, thank you for coming in. We look forward to talking to you soon.
It's great to be here.
All right.
Still to come, the Indiana State Museum puts the opioid crisis on display, and WGU Indiana is working on a major analytics effort. But first, more than 900 community leaders recently gathered to hear Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett give an overview on how the city will celebrate its bicentennial. The event also included a tourism update and an appearance from David Letterman. Inside Indiana business reporter Mary Rachel Redman was there.
Oh, Indiana is the place where I should be.
And increasingly, Indianapolis is the place to be, as the city continues to gain national attention as a top destination for conventions, major sporting events, and more. Something Visit Indy CEO Leonard Hoops knows better than anyone.
We had a great year. We've booked 840,000 or more room nights for 6 years in a row, and we sold more hotel rooms in central Indiana than any other year. So right off the bat, those are huge numbers. And that ultimately correlates to the most visitor spending ever, the most total visitors. But we also have these big conventions coming to town in the future, American Dental Association, American Society of Association Executives. The future is really bright for Indianapolis.
And under the bright lights of the Madam Walker stage, Indy's own David Letterman, on hand to receive Indy's highest tourism honor, and the former Late Show host still seemingly impressed with his hometown.
I've led a very lucky life. Being from Indianapolis has always been great, always something to be proud of. When I left Indianapolis in '75, I knew the city, east, west, north, south. And it was part of me. It's part of your DNA, part of your internal guidance system. You could go anywhere. And now, whenever I come back, which is 2 or 3 times a year, invariably I get lost. The city, in many ways, looks like a different city each time I come back here. I also find that when cities of this size and this location, you talk about cities up along the Lake Erie, like Cleveland, for example, have struggled mightily, whereas this city has done nothing but, to my eye, in a very positive way, blossom.
And the framework is in place for Indy to continue that positive growth.
Well, we have something called the Indianapolis Regional Tourism Master Vision that's working on all sorts of things. Things like the Shining a Light in Monument Circle were one of the ideas that has evolved as a result of that process. Now the White River Master Vision is another area where we're looking 58 miles between Hamilton and Marion counties. And beaches, among other things, are coming to Indianapolis.
Visit Indy's top priority in 2020?
We want to get that expansion done. Once we get that expansion done and the Signia Hilton is finalized and Pan Am Plaza is done, there's all sorts of things that can happen in the future.
Mary Rachel Redman, Inside Indiana Business.
Later in the podcast, WGU Indiana is looking to fine-tune its curriculum to align with workforce needs, and the longtime commissioner of the IHSAA is ready for his next chapter. But now, the opioid crisis is impacting families and communities throughout the state, and the Indiana State Museum is ready to start a conversation about it. A new exhibit on the crisis has been in the works for more than 2 years. CEO Kathy Ferry spoke with Kylie Valletta in the Business of Health.
This is kind of a darker topic than what the museum typically focuses on. So why is a museum a good place to have this conversation versus other places?
What we want to do, and interesting that you would say that it's a darker topic, and that's actually what we're trying to work against. So museums, according to the American Museum Association, are the most trusted institutions in the country. So we know that people come to museums curious and interested, asking questions, and this is a topic that is normally very isolating. So we want to have a place where people can come and ask questions and be curious and get answers without being judged and feel like it's a safe environment.
Yeah, speaking of that, a stigma surrounds opioid use disorder. I mean, people, to be very frank, sometimes think people who are addicted are weak or have some other character flaw, but you guys are really focusing on breaking that perception.
And breaking the stigma, A, by having it at the museum so that you can ask questions without anyone questioning you, and B, really focused on the science and the impact. And we had 16 very brave Hoosiers come forward and tell their stories. So you can see people just like yourself who've been through this and understand it, or you can look into the science to understand it, or the data. Depending on what you're really interested in, we can bring you into a topic that you might not know a lot about, and then move you through the larger story.
And the data and the science is showing it's a disease.
It's a disease, absolutely. It's
So,
a brain disease.
Right, and this exhibit also it focuses on the positive side. It talks a lot about hope and recovery. So tell us about the positive messages that you want people to take away.
It's interesting. We are really looking at, by breaking that stigma, that allows people to have hope because you're no longer isolated or shamed by it, but you better understand it. And with the lack of information, people just make up things. So they, what they read in a book or they saw on TV, and most of those things are fiction. So what we're hoping is that people will walk out with a better understanding, a deeper understanding of what opioid use disorder looks like and how they might be able to make a difference. So we're hoping that people will change their language behind it. Instead of saying addicts, it's people with opioid use disorder, and really think about, is there someone that they should probably reach out to just to sort of help them break down that isolation. And lastly, be trained on Narcan. So anyone can administer that. It's an antidote. It doesn't do anyone harm, but it has saved many, many lives. So we are hoping to give you tools not only to better understand, but to walk away with some things that are actionable so you too can make a difference in this crisis.
Obviously, this exhibit is in Indianapolis, but talk about how you're expanding this conversation statewide.
One of the reasons we felt we were appropriate for this is because we are a statewide entity. We have 12 locations, as far north as Rome City and as far south as New Harmony. So our sites also serve as safe environments for people to have conversations. And it has hit the rural and the urban. It has not decided, oh, you are not involved or you are. Everyone is involved at some level. So what we can do at those sites is have what we call courageous conversations and bring in the people in that community together in a safe environment to have this conversation. We can bring community partnerships together. We can have Narcan training. So we're really working with each individual community on what it is we can do to help them have a better conversation or different conversation about opioid use disorder than they've been able to have before.
All right. Well, definitely a new topic for the museum. Good luck this year with the exhibit. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, we hear from the outgoing commissioner of the IHSAA, and our panel of insiders weighs in on Indiana's top business stories. But first, WGU Indiana, the state's online university, is partnering with labor market analytics firm MZ on what it calls a groundbreaking new initiative. The idea is to map the skills and competencies that WGU students acquire and match them to real-world jobs. Chancellor Allison Bell has more in our Eye on Education segment.
Before we get to the partnership, WGU Indiana coming up on 10 years.
That's right.
Right, your 10-year anniversary here in Indiana. And 9,000 graduates. That's an amazing number.
It is an amazing number. That's 9,000 lives changed plus the families that impacts.
Very good. Well, I know we'll hear more about that as the year unfolds. I mentioned this partnership with MC, an Idaho-based company, deals with workforce and work skills. Talk about how this partnership is coming together.
Well, it makes perfect sense. WGU Indiana from the beginning has focused on really being certain that our degree programs prepare our graduates for their career path. So we focus on competencies and skills that are relevant in our degrees. So the partnership with MC is natural. They have an open skills library with more than 30,000 skills that they've identified. The way they identify those workplace relevant skills is they do a nationwide scan every 2 weeks of open job postings. Yeah. And so with that skills library, they can match those skills to our degree programs and to use artificial intelligence to create these career maps to help our students even better understand how their degree programs really develop skills that are relevant.
So how does that work for a student? If I'm a student at WGU Indiana, what does this database, this data, what does it actually do for me?
So if you could break it down to actually the level of a specific degree, let's say you're getting an accounting degree in business, while they've always been able to identify the competency areas that they obtain through that degree, they can now look at these skills maps that are connected to that accounting degree, and it breaks those competencies down into specific skills that are connected to job openings in the industry. What that does is that empowers our graduates to be able to speak the language of the employer and to be able to market themselves more effectively, to say specifically, I have this skill that you are looking for in this specific accounting program.
There has been a lot made of for lack of a better term, the disconnect between academia and the business community. I know BioCrossroads just recently came out with a study on that. This kind of would seem to get to the heart of that and really creating more connections between the two to the benefit of the student.
That's right. That is exactly what the mission of MC has always been, is to create a common language where business and people and education can speak the same language about skills. That's what they're about. Well, that's really what WGU Indiana was formed to do also. So the partnership between WGU Indiana and MC actually really directly addresses with power that issue that exists.
As we wrap up, certainly workforce development, talent development and attraction continues to be big big issues. Talking with the governor on the show this week about that. As you look at kind of the landscape out there and efforts at WGU and other institutions, what do we see going on with that whole workforce development issue? Because it's a big one for Indiana.
In Indiana, I think as I've traveled around the state and talked with community and business leaders, unemployment is at its lowest rate since 2000. It's 3%. But we every day talk with employers who are, seeking good employees, to fill that need. So we'll just continue to be a part of that solution.
Very good. Allison Bell is the chancellor of WGU Indiana. Soon will be 10 years here in the state and really working hard on workforce and other issues. Allison, as always, we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks so much.
Later in the podcast, perspective on the top stories of the week from our panel of insiders. But now, Bobby Cox has served as commissioner of the Indiana High School Athletic Association since 2011, but his involvement in Indiana sports and education stretches way beyond that. He will step down August 1st. Cox joined Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports.
We've had you on many times over the years talking about initiatives and sometimes issues, but as you reflect now on your soon-to-end career, what makes you most proud, Bobby?
Well, I think one of the most rewarding aspects of the work was the partnership with Special Olympics Indiana and the development of our inclusion program and Champions Together Unified Sports. The opportunity to have young people with and without intellectual disabilities participate together representing their high school, wearing the name of the school on their jersey, that many times is the name of their community, is very special.
Yeah, and I've told many, I'm on the board of Special Olympics Indiana, I've told many, the first time I went to the Unified Track and Field Championships and watched a Special Olympian have a state championship medal placed around his or her neck was very special. You've also had a very strong emphasis on sportsmanship initiatives. And again, sometimes it's a crazy world out there.
It is, and high school sports are emotional, but we need to keep that emotion in check. And this is educational-based athletics. We're trying to teach lifelong lessons to our young people. And sportsmanship's a big part of that. You have to learn how to win with grace and lose with dignity. And the reality is sometimes that's hard to do. And so we've placed a lot of emphasis on it. And we've moved our emphasis away from student athletes and really looked at adults. We need to be better role models as adults. And so subsequently, we've spent a lot of energy and resource on that. And I feel really good about where we're at with our sportsmanship today.
Bobby, you've done a great job with branding the student athlete experience. For so many young people, young men and women, the high school experience, athletic experience, is that's their final destination when it comes to competition athletics.
It is, and we want to make sure that experience is robust and that they receive those lessons that they can't learn in the classroom. And so we spend a lot of time talking about that with our member school institutions and what is important about high school sports and making sure that it remains relevant and it remains important in the high school experience.
The IHSAA network, another accomplishment I know you're proud of.
We continue to expand our Trioca with television, internet, and radio continues to expand, and we provide content to all over the world now. And it's very rewarding that when I get calls from my colleagues around the country, they see our championships on their outlets, and they're wondering, now, how am I seeing yours and not seeing mine? And I feel good about that, though, because we get a lot of folks that will talk to us about it, brothers and sisters, grandpas and grandmas from all over the country say, hey, I got to see my kid, my grandkid, my niece and nephew play.
Less than a minute left, Bobby. The IHSAA Foundation, again, something that came on board during your tenure, and I know that's going to have a lasting impact.
And that's the goal, is to have a lasting impact to uphold the values of education-based athletics and be a repository for the IHSAA to do special things for our member school.
Well, we will see you on the links, and you have a Florida home, you have a place up in northern Indiana, but you're still going to be around, right?
I will be around. I'm going to stay on a few boards, and I will still keep my hand in things, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, congratulations on a fantastic tenure, and I'm glad to have you as a friend and as a guest here on the show for so many occasions.
Thank you.
Bobby Cox.
And finally, our insiders weigh in on Governor Holcomb's vision for Indiana, Indianapolis's bicentennial, and more. This week's panel includes University of Indianapolis Assistant Professor of Political Science Laura Merrifield Wilson, Indiana Chamber of Commerce Senior Vice President of Communications Tom Schuman, and Genova's Executive Managing Director Larry Gigrich.
We had Governor Holcomb on the show early, on the top of the show, the first two segments. Certainly in his State of the State address, he had a couple of, or at least one big announcement regarding economic development. Coming off a record 2019, as you well know, Larry, in economic development in Indiana. Then right off the bat, Toyota putting the wraps on a $2.3 billion investment in Princeton. Fiat Chrysler in Kokomo with $400 million investment. Would seem to be things are off to a good start.
Yeah, for sure. I think Indiana continues to be on a roll economically. And you look at the numbers from last year in 2019, record average hourly wage levels for projects the IEDC supported, and incredible capital investment numbers. And still job creation numbers that were very strong, but really the wage levels and the capital investment, because of its impact on communities in Indiana, really important.
What's driving that? I mean, you know, there's a lot of international investment, direct foreign investment as well. In your view, or is it a series of things coming together?
I think it's a series of things. I think if you go back and look at a lot of the changes that were made to, you know, our toolbox, so to speak, starting under Governor Daniels and then progressing going forward, we have a great environment for businesses looking to locate in Indiana. I think now with the emphasis being put on talent with next level jobs the last few years, that's helping us move forward on that talent curve, which is where we have the most work left to do.
Yeah, in terms of policy, Tom, I know the Indiana Chamber, big proponents of the smoking age and some health-related issues. The governor seems to be on board with
Absolutely. You know, both the governor and legislative leaders have got on board with raising the smoking age to 21. So that looks like that will happen, and of course took place at the federal level. Some of the other measures, increasing the taxes, that'll be a discussion that'll take place in the 2021 session, but there's some momentum there. On the international investment you talked about, Gary, I wanted to mention, think back 35 years ago. We need to thank then Governor Bob Orr and John Mutz for their efforts in Japan and what that has paid off today, and it's just such a big factor in the continuing success.
And back then, they established some international offices, right, for Indiana in those countries, and it was by no means totally supported. There was a lot of opposition to it.
I know you've mentioned it on the show before, but it just bears repeating. Those efforts have been so beneficial for many, many years and will continue to be so.
Yep. Laura, another item going through the legislature now seems to be on track for passage, and that's the hands-free driving regulation.
Which is a really important policy. I think a lot of people know you have the no texting, but that didn't mean you couldn't email, Snapchat, Instagram, anything else on your phone while driving. And a number of states do have this kind of legislation, really important in terms of curbing those kind of accidents.
And I guess it would seem on one hand to be a no-brainer, but I guess the implementation and the policing and things like that, I guess, would be the challenge.
I think that's going to be the hardest part to it. And I think it's something that we can all agree, we don't want people, texting and driving. We want them emailing and driving. And at the same time, it's very easy to look to your left and right when you're on the highway and see folks doing just that.
Part of the governor's vision, too, for infrastructure, or he calls it connectivity, is connecting not only via roads and bridges, but things like nonstop flights. And certainly there's been a big increase in nonstop flights at Indianapolis International Airport. Can we expect, do you think, Larry, will begin to see more announcements, including maybe even international nonstops, additional?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, you look at the airport and their work, they've done a fantastic job of identifying markets, working with the business community, and figuring out how to support those. And I think certainly on the international side, with the great success thus far of the flight to Paris, I mean, super successful. I think beat everyone's expectations. I think that creates other opportunities, especially in Europe, for places like London and others that really would help us from a business standpoint.
And having the top airport in North America, I guess, doesn't hurt
for sure.
as well. Other big news at the Indiana State House, Pat Bauer announcing this week his intent to step down from the Indiana General Assembly after 50 years. That's a long time, Tom.
Well, you think about it, maybe between Pat Bauer and Brian Bosma, the current speaker, 84 years of leadership. And they've been involved in so many things, both individually and working together. Their fathers served in the General Assembly and were friends. And they developed a relationship that go back to 2003 and passed an economic development package that, again, was very crucial to many of the developments we've seen. So just tremendous service over the years from both of them.
Yeah, Laura, as you look at it, rare that you get someone with that longevity and that many roles, important roles at the Indiana General Assembly.
It is. I mean, you look at the depth of his experience. He served as Speaker of the House. He's Minority Speaker, Chairman of Ways and Means, incredibly important committee. I applaud these men and for what they've done, their service, and it's also great, exciting opportunities. We come to an election cycle for some new blood and new people involved.
Higher education, I mentioned a big gift for IU, actually $16 million gift to the IU Kelley School of Business from Brian and Sheila Jellison, the Family Foundation. You're in higher education. You know that money, it really helps to fuel a lot of different
It does. It begins as kind of momentum, and it can keep going in terms of inertia for the program. Kelley has not just a statewide, but a national reputation for what they do, and this money will really help propel them, certainly in terms of bringing in students, bringing in talent from faculty, but also the research and the work that they provide.
Also this week, a big announcement from Visit Indy, another recap of the year in tourism 2019. They unveiled some big numbers and also honored a favorite son of Indianapolis. David Letterman came back to receive the Bill McGowan Award for our tourism, very prestigious award. Tom, as you look at tourism, it has become such an important part of the economy, and going forward, celebrating the bicentennial, they're going to try to drive more tourism to the city.
Well, look at between the last two things we talked about, the magic number is 200 years of Indiana University, 200 years for Indianapolis, that bicentennial. On the tourism side, so many things going on around the state, but again, the thing that we have to do better, and we hear it often, is we have to toot our own horn. We have to get out there and make everybody else aware of all these great opportunities in Indiana. So that'll be a big focus going forward.
Well, and credit to Governor Holcomb and his team recognizing that, the creation of the Indiana Destination Development Corporation. That's huge. It puts us in a position to really tell that story going forward. And with Elaine Beadle moving from the IEDC over to there, understanding how you connect those economic dots, really, really important.
It's going to help with workforce too,
for sure.
The tourism, I think.
You think I think it's going to be one of the big stories to watch going forward.
Yeah, no question. And I think, again, we weren't really visible in that space, and now we are. And to Tom's point, the opportunity to bolt on the talent piece to that, I think, is huge.
Yeah. Always like to touch on sports on the Insiders, and this week Wallet Hub came out with their lists of the best cities in the United States for professional and college football. Indianapolis ranked number 11 on that list for pro football. Tom, was that an accurate ranking?
You know, it wasn't always that way. If it was 15, 20 years ago, I don't think we would have had that lofty ranking. Again, go back to quarterback, number 18, Peyton Manning, not only changed the mindset about professional football, but high school football, and really throughout the state, and helped grow. So, yeah, we're ardent fans here in Indianapolis and all of Indiana, and I'll have a close eye on the Super Bowl this Sunday.
Yeah, I know, Laura, you're a big college football fan. Roll Tide, right?
I am, Roll Tide.
But the importance of football as part of a sports makeup for a community can't be overstated.
It is. I think culturally it's so important. It's not just folks that really like the sport, but it's being a part of it for watching the game. You don't have to understand it. Just being there from a cultural and social perspective. As Tom said, it's not just for Indianapolis, it's for the entire state.
Very quickly, Larry Bobby Cox retiring at the IHSAA. Just had him on the show this week. Really some great service.
Oh, incredible. And how that organization moved forward, the changes they made just to keep up with different things, and really doing it in a way where it was focused on the student athlete, right? I mean, and doing it in a very measured way and focusing on that, which is what you should focus on when it comes to high school sports.
Very good. Larry Gigrich, Laura Merrifield Wilson, Tom Schumann, thank you.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.